Hello and welcome, friends. Up till now, you would recall that we have discussed the industrial policies of 1956 and 91. A little bit of discussion is also expected on the topic of industrial sickness in India. So, we'll be having maybe one or two sessions on this particular topic. We'll only briefly discuss industrial sickness, what we mean by it, and what are the symptoms of industrial sickness, and then what are the causes behind the industrial sickness, and then we'll be moving over to the solutions or how we can prevent the instances of industrial sickness. So you need to understand first of all what is industrial sickness. Industrial sickness is simply when a particular industry is not able to earn profits. It is not able to even earn the amount that is spending in various activities. It is not even able to earn, it is not able to pay to its employees. So these are all instances of industrial sickness. So sickness means the business is no more viable, it cannot continue. Why? Because it is not earning sufficient returns, it is not earning sufficient profits, and this is why it is not going to be viable in the long term. This is what industrial sickness is. So you have heard of so many cases of some even large scale enterprises shutting down because of continued losses, and this is more so in the small scale industries sector, wherein so many industries close down because of the continued losses. In fact, this is a very relevant topic in the current scenario when we are witnessing the onslaught of the COVID-19 infections, because of which so many small scale industries have to close down because they became sick within a period of 2 to 3 months only, just because of lack of demand in the market, just because of the economic shutdown that we experienced for the last 2 months, that we have been experiencing for the last 2 months. And this is again all these companies shutting down their shutters and all these companies wrapping up their business is again an example of industrial sickness. So let us have a talk about what basically is industrial sickness. Continued losses endangering the viability. Viability would mean continuance. So the firm cannot continue operations, it cannot continue to remain in business just because of continued losses. This is industrial sickness. As far as RBI is concerned, now this could be a little old definition, but as far as RBI is concerned, RBI defines industrial sickness in a more objective manner. We cannot say that, for example, a particular company is incurring losses, so naturally it is sick. There has to be some kind of an objective criteria, and this objective criteria is given by RBI. Incurred cash loss in a particular year. So if a company is incurring cash loss in a particular year, likely to continue to incur cash losses in the 2 following years, in the upcoming 2 years also, the current ratio has dropped down below 1:1, which means current assets are less than current liability. I hope you remember what current ratio is, the ratio between current assets and current liability. So if the current assets fall down below the level of current liabilities, which means the liabilities are now more than the assets, it can be termed as a sick industry, as a sick firm. And again, the worsening debt equity ratio. You know the ideal debt equity ratio is 2:1. If it worsens further, let's say, what do we mean by worsening? Let's say it becomes 4:1. Now this is a sign of excessive debt, and this is a sign that the particular firm is not doing well. It is basically sick, and it may not be able to survive for a long period of time. Again, if you talk about the Sick Industrial Company Act, the SICA, S-I-C-A, Special Provisions Act. Now this act was formulated in 1985. According to this particular act, you will find that the definition of industrial sickness is when accumulated losses are more than the entire net worth. So the total losses are more than the worth of the company, more than the value of all the assets that the company has, that the firm has. The losses are even more than that, which means that even if the company tries to sell all its assets, even then it would not be able to cover up for all its losses, then the company can be called to be sick. Suffered loss in the immediately preceding financial year, in the last year. Immediately preceding means the last year. So if the company has also suffered loss in the immediately preceding financial year, then it would be considered to be a sick firm, sick enterprise. Now, what are the symptoms of a sick enterprise? Sickness has got symptoms. Whenever you are sick, naturally there are symptoms which tells the doctor, these symptoms tell the doctor that you are suffering from a particular disease, from this particular disease. So this is what we mean by symptoms. And in industries also, when the sickness arrives, when the firms are not able to earn sufficient profits, they are incurring losses again and again every single financial year, naturally there are some symptoms which can give you an idea that the firm is not doing well. It is facing so many problems, it is incurring losses. So what are these symptoms? Let us have a look at these symptoms. Lack of funds to meet short-term obligations. They would not be able to meet short-term obligations. For example, it may so happen that they have bought raw material from a particular supplier, but they would not be able to pay for that raw material. It may so happen that they would not be able to pay the electricity bill. So these short-term obligations they would not be able to pay just because there are not sufficient funds available. Then inability to return loan or interest on time. They would not be able to return loan on time. Many a times they would delay repayment. They would delay the monthly installments, or they would go to the government to get the whole loan restructured, refinanced. They would want the government to change the tenure of the loan. For example, if the loan is of 2 years, the amount has to be returned in 2 years, and the rate of interest is 10%, and the monthly installment is, let's say, 10,000. I'm giving just an example of how you can get your loan restructured. They would go to the bank and they would ask for a longer tenure loan. The same loan amount now will be returned in 5 years. The interest is still the same, but the monthly installment that will have to be paid may get reduced to, let's say, 4,000 or 5,000, and that will put less pressure on them, and that is why they get the loan restructured also. So if a particular company is going to the banks every 6 months to get the loan restructured, then probably they are going to be sick very soon. Delay in payment of statutory dues. I hope you know what do we mean by statutory. Statutory means which are provided by law. For example, if there are a number of workers is beyond a certain limit, then the management of a firm has to get the employees enrolled into the employee provident fund, and they also have to contribute to the employees provident fund account. Likewise is the case for employee state insurance. So in both the cases, what will happen, since the funds are less, there is not sufficient availability of funds because of not being able to earn sufficient revenues, what will the sick enterprise do? It will delay its payment. So it would not be able to pay the EPF contribution on time. It will delay its depositing the EPF contribution or depositing the SI contribution. So these kind of defaults would be very, very common. Again, decline in capacity utilization. Why would there be a decline in capacity utilization? There has to be a reason behind this. See, capacity utilization would decline. There is a reason for this. Capacity utilization will decline because you are not getting sufficient orders. Because probably you are not able to satisfy your customers. Naturally, the customers are not placing orders with you. So the company is not getting sufficient number of orders, which means their machines would remain idle because they do not have, they are not having orders. They are not getting any orders from their customers to produce large number of items. So naturally their machines would remain idle for longer periods of time. Their manpower would remain idle for longer periods of time, or the factory would remain shut down for maybe 2 days or 5 days or 10 days just because there are no orders. So why do we produce? We would not be producing if there are no orders. So basically this would happen, and this would lead to a decline in the capacity utilization, and so it can be constituted to be a sign of industrial sickness. Then again, there would be frequent breakdowns in production stoppages. There would be frequent breakdowns. Now, why is this happening? Please understand. Frequent breakdowns means the machinery is not being taken care of. Machinery is not getting periodic maintenance. And why is machinery not getting periodic maintenance? Maybe because the company does not have sufficient funds, or maybe also because the company does not have the orientation to go for periodic maintenance. They are rather more, they rely more on corrective maintenance. When the machine breaks down, then only they are going to get some engineer to rectify the error. They are not going to go for periodic maintenance of that particular machine. What does this mean? This means that the management of the company is not keen to ensure that the production goes without any disruption. The production process is not disrupted, which means basically that the management is probably not very efficient. And if the management is not efficient, naturally the company may not be able to do very well. And so this could also be a sign of industrial sickness. Delayed production. The company is not able to produce as per the customer order. It is not able to deliver as per the customer order on time, because of which the customer would naturally want to switch to some other company which is more diligent and which is more punctual in fulfilling the customer orders. So naturally what will happen after some time, this company which is not able to satisfy the customer on time, which is not able to deliver the product on time, this would stop getting orders from the customers, and naturally their earning capacity would reduce and they may start incurring losses and they may become sick. So this could also be a symptom. Now this is something that could lead to industrial sickness in future. Decline in quality is one more issue. If there is a decline in quality, perceptible decline in quality, or the products are of low quality, naturally there would be some kind of dissatisfaction among the customers. The customers would not buy the product again and again, and naturally this may cause the company to incur losses in future. So this is some kind of a signal that the company, if it continues, if it does not mend its way, if it does not improve its quality, if it does not improve on timely delivery, if it does not deliver the products on time to its customer, then what will happen in future? It may start incurring losses, because yes, the customers would switch away. So these are some of the symptoms of industrial sickness. Then again, high turnover. What happens if a company is not doing well? Suppose you are working with a good company and suddenly you find out one fine day that the company has started incurring losses, and this has now happened for 2-3 years. What will you do? Don't you think you would want to switch to some other company where you have more stable prospects, which guarantees you a stable job, stable employment, no uncertainty? Naturally you would want to do that, and that is why more and more people would start leaving these kind of companies. They would want to switch from these kind of companies to those companies which are working in a more stable fashion, which are doing well. So this is what I mean by high turnover. I hope you remember turnover is a term that we've studied in human resource management. So there would be a lot of attrition. Basically I want to say voluntary movement outside the company. People would move out, they would exit the company voluntarily, just because they don't find the firm providing them long-term stable employment, just because the firm is not doing well. So if the firm does not well, more and more people switch, employees move out a lot, and naturally when the more employees switch, then what will happen? You will have to compensate for those people who have left, for those employees who have switched, who have left your company, and so you would be going for more recruitment also. So this could be another symptom, more and more recruitment while the attrition is still going strong. While the attrition levels are high, more and more recruitment is taking place to compensate for the attriting numbers for those who are leaving the organization, and so you are recruiting more number of people. So this could be another symptom of impending crisis. Then late submission of data to banks. Many a times it is easy for the banks to find out from the data as to how a particular company is doing, and that is why whenever if you open up a business, you would find that the bank would always keep monitoring your stock statements. What is the quantity of stocks that you keep? Keep monitoring your tax returns. How much tax are you paying? Why? Because this will give them a good idea about how you are performing, whether you are doing okay, whether the business is doing okay, is it profitable or is it not. And that is why many a times what happens is, if the firm is not doing well, they are incurring losses, they would deliberately delay providing their financial data to the banks. And why are they providing financial data to the banks? Because they have taken loan from these banks. Otherwise there is no requirement for them to provide any financial data to a bank, but they are providing because they have taken loans. And that is a condition. Whenever you are taking loans, then you might be directed by the agency who is financing your requirements to provide periodic data so that they can keep a tab on, so that they can keep monitoring how you're performing, how well your business is performing. So in such cases, what these companies would do, they would start delaying the submission of data to the banks again, and they would also delay the audits, both the internal as well as the external audits. Internal audits take place within the organization and they are basically conducted by employees in the organization. So many firms have their own auditors, so they have an audit department which takes care of the audit requirements of the whole organization. So these are internal audits, and many times there are got to be external audits also. For example, if you are a company which is listed in the stock markets, you have to get your accounts audited by an external auditor also. So they would delay these kind of audits because they are apprehensive that in case these kind of audit happen, the problem that they are facing might come out in the open and people will get to know about the problems that you are facing or the losses that you have been incurring. And so what will they do? They will delay their audits. Okay. Now we'll be moving over to the external causes of industrial sickness. Now that we have had a look at the symptoms, we will be moving over to the external causes. What are the causes of industrial sickness? So the first cause is the recessionary trends, and this is something that if you're reading newspapers, you would find that this is one particular external cause which is responsible for industrial sickness in India as of now. So many small scale industries are closing down, they are shutting down, they are not able to provide salaries to their employees, they are closing down their business. The reason is recessionary trends, and recessionary trends have come because of the COVID-19 crisis. COVID-19 crisis, lockdown, the demand decline. Naturally, if the demand declines, naturally you have to produce less, which means your capacity would remain idle, you would not be able to sell your products in the market, naturally you would not earn much and you would not be able to pay your employees, so you would fire them or you would ask them to leave. So all these things are happening. So recessionary trends are one reason why industries go sick. They become sick, they start incurring losses, and I've given you examples of so many small scale enterprises in India which have been facing this issue in the last 2 months after the lockdown, since the lockdown has started because of the COVID-19 crisis. Then credit squeeze by banks. Many a times the banks are very apprehensive of providing credit to the industries, and this is very, very true specifically in the case of small scale industries. They are very, very apprehensive, or small businesses specifically, maybe which are run by 1 or 2 people, maybe 2 brothers, or maybe one single individual running. So they are very apprehensive about the repayment capacity, about the credit worthiness of the borrower. And so what do? They do not provide whatever amount is required by the borrower. So the firm has gone to the bank and has maybe asked for a 10 lakh loan. They would not provide the whole amount. They would probably only provide 5 lakhs or 6 lakhs because they're apprehensive that the firm may not be able to return this amount, may not be able to return this borrowed amount. And so they would go for a credit squeeze. They would squeeze the credit. Naturally, if the firm does not have sufficient amount of funds because the bank is not providing them the kind of funds that they require, they would not be able to invest in their business, they would not be able to invest in new technology or in hiring professional staff, or maybe going for good quality technology, good quality products, or maybe going for better technology machines. And naturally they would lose out in the market. They would not be able to sell in the market. They would not be able to satisfy their customers in the market. They cannot, again, if they do not have funds, how can they spend in marketing their products or creating a brand for themselves? And naturally they would lose out in the market. So this could be one reason of a firm going sick, of a firm witnessing industrial sickness, or firm witnessing incurring continued losses. Then this is one major problem, delayed payment by customers. This is very, very true in the case of small scale industries. Now why am I talking more about small scale industries than large scale industries? The reason is, first, small scale industries are more numerous. If you compare the number of small scale industries, there are so many of them. So naturally the number of sick enterprises would be more in small scale industry sector than in large scale industry sector. And secondly is, large scale enterprises, they have sufficient reserves at times to continue and to somehow sustain themselves even when the business, even when the market condition is not that conducive. For example, there are so many large-scale enterprises which are facing problems because of the COVID-19 breakdown, but they are able to sustain their business. They are able to continue. They are able to continue their business, their operations, just because they have sufficient reserve funds to dip into. So they can always dip into their reserve funds and they can they can tide over the bad patch. However, this is not possible for small scale enterprises because they simply do not have that kind of reserves available with them. So many a times what happens is that the customers don't pay promptly. So many of these small scale industries, many of the firms, they actually supply various items to other firms which are generally large scale firms. The large scale industries, they simply don't make the payment for this good that they have brought, for the items that they have bought promptly, and because of which what happens is that the firms which are selling to these large scale enterprises, they are not able to get paid promptly, and because of which they will have to rely on a higher working capital, because they're not going to get paid promptly by the large customer, the large scale enterprise. What will they do? They will have to go for additional working capital, and their money would be locked with their customer, and the customer is not paying. Customer is delaying for 2 months, 3 months. So naturally they would require more amount of working capital to run their business, which means they would have to pay more interest on this working capital loan that they take from a particular bank, and then also their money would remain locked with the customer, because of which it may so happen that after some time their interest obligations may rise so high that they start incurring losses. So this could also happen. And why is this happening? Because the reputed and large customers, they have high bargaining power. They have great bargaining power. They are very dominant because they can switch to any supplier, while the supplier does not have this kind of option. He cannot simply let the customer switch to the customer firm, the large scale customer firm, switch to some other supplier. So they have no other option and they have to stick to that particular firm, and so they agree to these kind of terms by their customers, by the large scale customers, large scale industries which are their customers, and they agree to pay them to sell their products to them on credit. So this is one major reason. And you would recall that only recently the government has been appealing to the large scale industries, not only in the private sector but also in the public sector, the PSUs also, that they should make payments to their suppliers promptly. They should make prompt payments to their suppliers so that the suppliers have sufficient amount of funds available for them to run their operations. Now this is one appeal that is being sent out. This is what the central government has been appealing to most of the large scale industries. And so this tells you that this is a big reason for, okay, we are